Hi there. Thank you for visiting my channel again. Please do not forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up for like, share, and you may leave a nice comment below. And I would like to have these messages and information that I give in these videos. They sometimes are long, but they have a lot of information to give and they're worthwhile. I would like to have as many people as possible share these messages. My name's Winifred Davis, and I have been a shaman, psychic medium, traditional and spiritual counselor and healer for the past 37 years. I'm also an author, poet, essayist, and a former spoken word movement performer. I subscribe to no religion. I believe in universal justice and the truth. With the imposter justice of man, there's always an exception to every rule. But with universal justice, there are no exceptions to its rules. There is no side, no my side, no your side to the truth. The truth stands unopposed. Please remember that I'm not here to lead anyone. I do not wish to be a leader of anything, as I do not want anyone to lead me. I am just a vessel, delivering messages from the collective, my many guides and members of the different hierarchies, including the angelic realm. My duty is to my conscience, the light that I was given, and we all were given a free will and a conscience, which is the light to guide our free will. The conscience is what links us back to the Creator. That's something that is greater than us. Now, as I'm given the messages by my guides, they are sometimes harsh because they are the truth. And I have to deliver them as I get them. And only by facing the truth, no matter how harsh it is, how brutal it is, and by looking in that mirror of self-reflection. And sometimes that reflection that we see in the mirror is not so pretty. Only then can we move on, improve ourselves, and move up that ladder of soul restoration. It's like if you have a problem, you have to know what the problem is, face the problem. Only then can you solve that problem, right? Now, I am fulfilling my self-soul contract and my Neptunian contract. And I chose, as part of my vocation, part of my contract in this lifetime, as I have in other lifetimes, to be a messenger. Now, once again, as I said, I'm not here to lead anyone. I'm not here to convert anyone. Each man must evolve according to his own light. Please do not interpret freely what I say. Say exactly what I say. If you do not understand, feel free to ask in the comments below, or you may send me an email. My email is listed below, or you can go on my website as well. That's also listed below. Now, I deliver the messages as I get them. And in the words of my great-grandmother, Aunt Ella, Somigeti, So, Miss Sally, as I get it, that's exactly how I deliver it. I have to deliver the message. I cannot freely interpret. And if I interpret in the wrong way or how maybe it might sound pretty, my guides will not permit me to write. I'll just write nonsense. Now, I started this channel, as I usually say, to discuss the truth. That is reincarnation and its facts. And at times I will discuss at length current events as I see fit, because they are relevant to that truth that is reincarnation and its facts. They're testament, living proof, as we all are, and the things that each of us does. Now, this is a very special, what I call cup runneth over period of greater transition that only happen ever so often. And please see my book for an in-depth discussion of this topic. Now, what I have here, I did mention messages that I got before in the first video of this 3-part video series, so I won't mention them in this particular video. What I will mention again, and I will do this as long as the situations exist, I will mention these because they're very important to me, and I think they should be important to all of us. Please do not forget that there is still no peace in Gaza. The genocide, the ethnic cleansing continues there in Gaza and in the West Bank, where the situation is very dire. It has also spread to Lebanon. More than 1 million people in less than a month have been displaced. 1 million. More than 1 million. In Iran, it's more than 3 million. And well, we know Gaza and the West Bank. And genocide could easily occur in Lebanon, and if permitted, also in Iran, throughout the entirety of the Muslim world, by the state of Israel and by its hostage, America. And we must not forget the crisis in Sudan, where millions are enduring famine, and they've only gotten a break in the past couple of weeks with the genocide and the ethnic cleansing because the supporters of that particular party, that particular group in the civil war, were being supported by others, including Israel, as usual, but they're engaged elsewhere now, so the government forces are moving in. So there's a little break, but the starvation, the displacement, the horrors, it's just too much. Remember, please remember, all children, and this includes in Israel, even though the government is the perpetrator of so much misery and sorrow on other children, do not forget the children in Israel. And we mustn't forget the children, all children, in every conflict, whether it's the children of perpetrators or the victims. And of course, those little schoolgirls. opening salvo with America killing over 170 children in Minab. All children deserve to live in peace, surrounded by love. They have a right to shelter, to food, to water, to medicine, to education, and they have the right to play. So let us not forget all children. It's unfortunate they have to live through all these forever wars that adults create. Well, that's my pet peeve. One of my pet peeves. History destroying history and not taking care of our children. Now, you will get a full account of all the things that I'm discussing here from my books listed below. And this is for entertainment purposes only. I grudgingly say that. Now, this is part 2 of our 3-part series. And this particular part, I'm taking parts, snippets from the book I published that came out on Monday. I don't have any copies here, but the cover is really quite lovely. I'll see if I can pull it up on my phone and see if I can show you on like that. I don't have my copies yet. It's called Two Faces: Cyrus' Bill of Rights and Hitler's Aryan Paradise. So this second video now, it's called Nazi Paradise, Octopus of Strange Bedfellows. So we're going to be discussing here now the souls from Nazi Germany who have reincarnated in America, and some of them from the Nazi hierarchy have reincarnated in America. Hitler has also reincarnated, but not in America, and I explain in my book why not. You see, they're all strategically placed at this time, but some of them are, and I will discuss one in great detail and show in detail why that would be so. I mean, could be wrong, and we have to take it with a grain of salt, but the guides, they're right on. Anyhow, this is for entertainment purposes only. Now, in part 1 of our last video, we discussed the two faces of America. And forgive me, I'm going to read because I don't want to forget anything. I don't want to be talking and then going back and not remembering certain things. We discussed the two faces of America from the arrival of the first British settlers. And we talk also, I didn't in the video, but I'll do another video after this 3-part series on the octopus of strange bedfellows that I use, who was in a semi-slumber awaiting this moment. So it's now in America. Now, we have America's Constitution and Bill of Rights, and those were supposed to be the bulwarks against the other face of America that tends towards the darkness. So that was the face of, the Confederacy and slavery and, Jim Crow and all of that stuff. Unpleasant things. Now, it has been under attack, right? The Constitution and Bill of Rights has been under attack since its existence and the founding of the Republic. Now, on December 3rd, 2024, the South Korean president illegally declared martial law And within 8 months, the president and others were held to account. They were impeached, ousted, elections called. They were held, votes counted, victory declared, a new government formed. And the former president indicted on criminal charges. And he's since been convicted and sentenced, I believe, to life, and he still has more charges coming up. Life goes on. This, unfortunately, even though America is the model for so many of these democracies, unfortunately, never America does not uphold a lot of the ideals it espouses, like no man is above the law, but that's not really true. Just because we say so doesn't make it so, and because a lot in America's laws and constitution is based, the guardrails are based on decency. Well, you cannot have decency. Decency as a guardrail is only there for decent men. But it will never impede indecent and dishonorable men. Now, as I said, what happened in South Korea and the speed at which it happened could not have happened in America, although America is the model on which many of these democracies are based. Why could this not happen? What's the difference? There are several differences. Namely, an engaged, literate population with more critical thinking skills who realize that democracy only works and survives when we participate and exercise the most potent right that we possess, the vote. Brazil is another one that also did their duty, and now their president, former president, well, he's serving time. Often, we must settle with candidates presented to us, but then we have the option of voting for the lesser of two evils. The angel has thrown many stones since Reconstruction. However, our attention to that precipice has only been fleeting. In Jamaica, they say, your life long, but your careless witty. Your life is long, but you are careless with it. In other words, we're fortunate, but risk losing what we have because we do not take care. We take things for granted. Do not take things for granted. Now America has received that, arrived at this point where it has indeed become the Aryan paradise and the place where many entities that were Nazis like Ernst Röhm, Reinhard Heydrich, Paul Joseph Goebbels, Otto Dietrich, Heinrich Himmler, and Albert Speer have chosen to reincarnate at this time, as I think I mentioned in the last video. Mussolini, Hitler, and Julia Gombos, Hungarian, are also here with us today, though not in America. And I will tell you, Gombos, the Hungarian, he is Benjamin Netanyahu. And I discuss that in very fine details in the book listed below. Now, before proceeding, in order for you to understand this, because now we're looking through the eyes of the soul, the spiritual lens, reincarnation, to understand how we can link these together, I will explain something that is discussed in great detail in the first volume of the 2-volume series listed below, Thoughts on the Past, the Masks, and Equal Opportunity. In that one, it goes into great detail. So you can go to that book and it will give you more understanding. Now, I refer to these souls as miscreants. We're all miscreants to a greater or lesser degree. And as we move up that ladder of soul restoration, as we try to restore equilibrium to our souls, we become less and less miscreants. Now, total miscreants, and I'm in this video, I will refer to them as miscreants. Those are the ones on the very low rung of the ladder of soul restoration. And this is not a judgmental call or anything, because at the end of the day, in my understanding of reincarnation, each of us will climb that ladder, decide to climb that ladder, go through the arduous journeys that we will have to go through in order to restore balance to our souls. In other words, karma, right? When we commit spiritual mistakes or sin, karma is what brings us back into balance. We have to correct those mistakes. And so everyone will eventually get there. It is not a question of if, but one of when. Some people just prefer to stay on a certain ladder, bogged down by material things, the great mammon, and power, and all of that. But one day they will tire of it and decide to make that journey up. Now, when we return to the spiritual realm after death, we decide the karmic journeys on which we will embark to expiate, advance, and restore our souls. There are also souls on the lower rungs who have always tried to cheat karma and are still not interested in learning, expiating, or advancing their souls. They are still arrogant, totally subsumed by materiality, and unconcerned with that which is of their essence, the spirit. That is our essence. We are temporary human beings living on earth, but we are eternal spiritual beings. So, on earth, we are eternal spiritual beings experiencing temporary human life. Now, these souls, these miscreants, are in total denial of the spirit and still in full rebellion against their destiny, believing that they can cheat karma, that they don't have to do the work, they don't have to go through all those arduous journeys. They have not reincarnated in their proper soul cycles, which run from maybe 50 years, to 100. Well, these miscreants sometimes will go up to, you might have up to 500 years before they reincarnate. The more we would reincarnate is the more we advance, because we are working at it to go up and up and up. And sometimes we come, but we don't advance because, we repeat the same mistakes or whatever. But it's okay, just keep moving, right? Now, believing that they can cheat karma, they have not reincarnated in their proper soul cycles and have not had enough experience to move to a different level. They also plan their karmic journey, often awaiting the right time and environment or conditions when it is easier to usurp the free will of others, partake of the material advances of a society, and insert themselves into imprints or masks that will give them maximum power and cause havoc and misery. So insert themselves, we're all born into different masks, right? So, you might have a Nazi, and some have reincarnate now as Jews. Now, there are no soul contracts except with the miscreants on the very low rung of the ladder. They don't listen to their guides. We each have guides, but they don't listen to their guides. And so they only make contracts with each other, not to expiate. Maybe we make contracts, for example, with someone we might have wronged, so that we can come and expiate, correct the misdeeds, but not the miscreants. They will reincarnate and make contracts with each other as to how they're going to continue their power grab, so to speak. In most instances, there are no contracts between these souls and those who are moving up the ladder. They will insert themselves. That's against others' free will. Now recall that when these miscreant souls reincarnate, gotta read the book to get the details of this. We might ask why they're not prevented from doing so, because they're coming to create mischief. They're not prevented from reincarnating to create mischief because we have free will. It is up to each of us to decide whether we are going to reincarnate to expiate, advance, and restore our souls or not. There is no coercion. Whilst we are on earth, for defense, as a last resort, we might sometimes have to use the stick. So, we live in a world of mostly gray. As these souls are miserable, so they cause misery. Misery loves company. History teaches us that misery loves company. As these souls plan their karmic journey, there are many souls who are on the higher rung of the ladder of soul restoration that will also plan their journeys to enter the earthly realm at such time to counterbalance these mischievous souls intent on causing chaos, usurping the free will of others to gain power and control in this earthly realm. Now, these souls have come not to expiate, advance, and restore their souls, but to perpetuate, to finish their ignoble mission from another lifetime. Unlike the two entities in the prophecy of the homecoming of my Roman soldier, a Venusian to Neptunian karmic journey, that's another book that I wrote about the reunion of these two souls who have not yet reunited, but they will, prophesied decades and decades ago, and they made this contract eons ago from Atlantis, and they met up again in ancient Egypt and what have you, and they will reunite at this providential time because that's what they agreed to do. So in that, we see where these two souls, they've come to advance their souls and to do a Neptunian journey. It's a Neptunian contract. Now, their journey was cut short by betrayal, war, greed, and corruption. Okay, so these the miscreant souls, though, that we're gonna encounter, that we're encountering now, have returned to complete various selfish, as I said, and ignoble journeys be it from the Crusades or some other conflicts all over the world. There would be, different races, different colors, whatever. Some are masquerading now as Zionist Christians, as for example, the one who calls himself the Minister of War there in America, and others, and their loss of Jerusalem, Nazis in World War II, the advocates of Zionism from its beginning. These are all these souls that have now reincarnated. The very end of the 18th century as a British expansionist, that's what Zionism is. Colonial, racist, white supremacist, Eurocentric and anti-Muslim Christian enterprise. Confederates are here, like the rabble rouser and vote stealer that's still here, that's here today, and other conflicts throughout the ages, throughout the world, from east to west, north to south. Many of these souls are the crabs, as I say, with regards to the octopus of strange bedfellows. The crabs are suckered in by the tentacles of the octopus, and the tentacles represent the different ideologies, but then they are all, the brain, right, is one, right? The tentacles operate in an octopus independently, but the big thing is the brain. That's the commonality between them, which is all about power. Now, so they all have different agendas. Some are seeking vengeance, slave master, and even victims from the concentration camps. Some of them are seeking revenge from Nazi Germany, and so they haven't forgiven either. Some are even working with the perpetrators who helped to destroy them in whatever conflict, working with them because it suits their purpose to gain access to power. So, it looks like strange bedfellows, but at the end of the day, they really are not, because they have the same agenda. Now, it is truly an amazing confluence when you look into all those reincarnation history of some of these souls. So, others in the spiritual world, as I said before, knowing what would happen at this particular time in history, have chosen, some are rescue souls, and I explain what rescue souls are. These are the souls who are always there helping people. You don't even have to ask them for help. If they see you are in need, they will help you, no matter what. And they do not expect anything in return. They just help you. And they function on earth. They function on the astral plane, and what have you. Now, some of these rescue souls have actually sacrificed their lives. They've sacrificed their lives to bring attention, for example, to what's happening in Gaza, to expose, for example, pretenders to the throne of virtue, those who said they were for human rights, but at the end of the day, they weren't. And they were very selective. They are very selective in their empathy and their love for children, because for them, and I go back to Gaza, the children of Palestinians, their lives are not worth anything. It's okay what you do to a Palestinian baby, but you can't do that to an Israeli baby. The lives are not equal. And so we've seen this expressed by Europe, for example, all those European leaders. We see that they have absolutely no empathy, most of them, for the children in Gaza or the West Bank. Now, many of these rescue souls have gone a long way in restoring their souls. And as I said before, souls like these come as a counterbalance to the miscreants, the souls who are bent on revenge, on chaos, or just on sheer unbridled power. Now, as was previously mentioned, there are many events occurring throughout the world at this time. We will use the war on Gaza and America as examples here to serve as living proof and testament to the truth of the facts, that the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. Now, as I just showed, I just illustrated. Now, who are these souls who have come? Some of the actors, and if we consider life as a play, right? Who are these actors and the spectators? Who are they? From the spiritual realm. Now, as I said before, there are always hard truths to face when we deal with the history of our souls and our past deeds, right? This is one of the reasons why most of us cannot recall our past lives, because we are not ready to handle egregious, incorrect deeds in which we engaged. Once we start climbing up that ladder, we would be appalled to learn some of the things that we did while we were on the lower rung of the ladder. And so until we've gone through, as we climb, until we've gone through certain arduous journeys and our understanding grows, then slowly it will reveal itself. We will know. And I'm writing a book. It should be also out by the end of April, on past lives and how you will know, how they're revealed to you and when they're revealed to you. And then I use as an example the karmic journeys of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, how to reclaim past lives. So, for example, once someone like Anthony Blinken, he's a miscreant, he's the fireman, I call him, with the empty water hose that has never been connected to a fire hydrant and a replenished gas can behind his back, the man with the forked tongue during the Biden administration. They were just horrible. Democrats, but horrible. All no different between them and the Republican administrations when it comes to Palestinian children or Palestinians, period. They don't see them as human beings. And him, for example, or Linda Thomas Greenfield, the black lady who was the ambassador to the UN, when she would quibble over, like already dotted I's and already crossed T's to run out the clock so that Israel could slaughter more children. Like when they finally decide to go up that ladder, they will be horrified at what they did. If they would learn in other lifetimes what their lifetime was at this time, what they were doing. So they'd have to do many more karmic journeys until they reach that point where they would then be able to face those realities without going mad, right? I've been through those, so I know. And it's harsh. It's not nice when you realize what you've done in a past life. So that's why many of us are not privy to our past lives. Now, I won't go into, as I said, my other book, and I will do some videos with regards to that to explain all this about, past lives and the Akashic records and all of that stuff. Now, many people, all of us, right? We've worn many masks in different lifetimes. Sometimes we were Hindu, Muslim, pagan, Christian, Jew, Mesopotamian, Zulu, Malian, black, white, pansexual, asexual, bisexual, Scythian, and the list goes on. And we've all been different, worn different masks. And as I've said before, I've been male and female. I've been homosexual. I've been a writer. I've been an orator. I've been a hobo. I've been a horse thief. I've been, from Gujarat, and I've been a singer. I've lived in ancient Egypt. I've been king and queen and prophet. And as I said, hobo and house, slave. I've been everywhere. Lived in England, lived in North Africa, lived on Crete, you name it. So each of us have worn many different masks. Now, America is now the hegemon, I should say, in the world with accelerated progress, having benefited from the work of many Nazis, scientists and engineers. So, like the stealth bomber, for example, that's Nazi engineering. And you have the Japanese scientists and engineers with their human experiments and their Unit 731 horrific stuff that's mentioned in the books, and slave labor. And America, a lot of those Japanese scientists, they were never prosecuted because they gave all the results of those experiments, human experiments. So that's how we know at what point human flesh might melt, or stuff like that, and just horrific stuff. They gave the information to America, and at the same time you didn't want to incarcerate or punish a lot of these scientists and engineers, because at the time there was communism and capitalism, and so you had to keep as many people in your capitalism camp, so that it would be more than those countries who were in the communism camp. So there was all that politicking going around. So America did benefit, even with the space program. They did benefit from Nazi Germany, scientists and engineers. This is where the power lies, right? Military and economic might, not unlike Britain and the Industrial Revolution. So you had, remember now, the Soviet Union collapsed, so America has just controlled the world until now. We'll see. Now, we might add here that hegemony has been undermined. American hegemony has been undermined and is being undermined because of the very miscreant souls who have recreated, the Nazis, for example, have recreated to partake of all the good things. That's when these souls, these miscreants who try to cheat karma, they always reincarnate, especially when a society has reached a certain level in technological advancement and what have you, so they can partake of the goodness thereof, but not of the toil. And that is one of the reasons that civilization usually crumbles, because of the influx of these souls. And this is when they will not delay. For example, a lot of the reincarnated Nazis, they will not delay their soul cycle and reincarnating, they will do it very quickly, even months before, because this is the opportune time. Now, let me find my spot. You see, I keep talking. Okay, so we might add here that hegemony has been undermined, as I said, and is on its way down because of the very miscreant souls that now occupy the seat of power, and others before who have come to partake of the success and create mischief and destruction. Unfortunately, these miscreants, as we see in America right now, they are the last to realize that the ongoing loss of that power is due to them and to their actions, that there is a loss of that hegemony. And what you have now, for example, we'll use America, is you have these miscreants in the Manchurian regime. They still believe that America commands all that power that it used to. It's still very powerful because it has economic and military might, but people are not as afraid of America as they used to be. But these miscreants haven't realized that, they haven't gotten the memo yet. So they walk around unaware, still believing that it was like maybe 20 years ago, but it's not. And they, souls like them, are part of the reasons why it's gone downhill. Now, a point to note is that many of the reincarnated souls who were Nazis were also present during the Crusades and other conflicts, as I said, around the world in different masks. They have not yet tired of that very low rung of the ladder and to start to do the work to move up. And as I said, the entity that was Hitler is here. This is his 5th reincarnation in position of power. But obviously he has learned some things, but he hasn't learned a lot of things. Still, that power is still there. He also knew Nefertiti, by the way, and that's one of the reasons why he was so mesmerized by the bust, Hitler, when he saw the bust, and he hid it first in a bank vault because he didn't want the bombing to destroy it, and then he felt that wasn't safe enough, so he hid it in a salt mine. It was discovered after the war by American soldiers, and he refused to return it to Egypt. His grand plan was to build this museum to that bust. And I will explain in my book of the reunion and the karmic journeys of Akhenaten and Nefertiti why this was so. Now, what is happening with these reincarnated souls can be explained through the eyes, the eyes of the soul. Now, we recall, right, from one of the first experiments that a lot of us might have done in physics class, whether we did it in university or in high school, were with magnets. The first law of magnetism is, unlike poles or opposite poles attract north and south, and like poles, same poles, east and east, they repel. Now, magnetic poles are always in pairs, and there are a lot more going on there, but I won't get into that. And we cannot separate them. Those are dipoles. And then, you have the inverse square laws, etc., and on and on. Our concern here, though, is about the like poles repel and unlike poles attract. Now, contrary to these principles of the laws of magnetism, in the spiritual realm, like souls attract. Misery loves company. And you see miscreants hang out with each other. Only when there's a relevant expiation to undergo, you will see opposite poles drawn to each other, opposite souls drawn to each other. Souls who are extreme, once again, will attract other souls of their ilk. So of their ilk would be other souls who are also extreme. Once again, misery loves company. Now, souls who love peace will usually attract other souls who love peace. When souls who love peace attract souls of contrary affectation, I use the word affectation in the old sense, not in the new sense, where affectation is something that we put on, like a show, like we affect an accent, but it's not real. I use it in the older sense, the archaic meaning of the word. We can see as time moved along, more miscreant souls would be drawn to America, because you're having all these people with the face, that one face of America that tends towards the darkness. And so they would facilitate the entrance of miscreants, and the more they facilitate them, the more of these miscreants will be born, will be facilitated, and that's how it goes. Now, then you have, for example, in America, you have, souls who are on their way up the ladder, but then they condone delinquency. And so they also facilitate the entrance of miscreants into the society. Now, truth, as I said, is stranger than fiction. And now, I'm sorry to have taken you on this road, and you're probably, you have to read the other books to get a gist of it, but I hope you understood, at least a little bit. Now I'm going to really get into what I'm sure most of you would be wanting to hear about. Who are these souls, these Nazis who were reincarnated, who have been reincarnated in America? So truth is stranger than fiction, indeed it is. We marvel at how similar some in America's Manchurian regime, and I call it a Manchurian regime because, the Manchurian candidate is like an imposter, so to speak. He's working for another country or other interests than the country of which he is the head. But in this instance, and at this time, it's not only the head one who is, but the whole regime is that, because no one has America's interests at heart. All of America's secrets are out there. You have what I call, some have pimped out America's intelligence gathering, for money, and what have you. But we won't get into that right now. Now, some of these reincarnated souls, as I said, were present during the Crusades and the Confederacy. The entity that was Goebbels, Paul Joseph Goebbels, the propagandist for Nazi Germany, was tutored in this lifetime by a rabble-rouser and vote-stealer, election manipulator from the 19th century in America. And he was alive during the Confederacy. The entity that was Goebbels took under his wings the entity that was Otto Dietrich to tutor him about Europe and Europeans. Back then, it was about how to propagandize. The entity that was Goebbels was also present during the early days of the American Republic. According to journalist Gunther, and I forgot his first name, but he's an author, and I think he used to write for Life magazine. In 1940, he said Goebbels was the cleverest of all the Nazis. But he could not be Hitler's successor because everybody hates him. I wonder who that could be. He did not believe, Goebbels didn't believe in race theories promulgated by the rest of the Nazi hierarchy, and he felt that Nazism did not need what he called the rubbish of race materialism. He was born of different mask race back then. He was German, of course, and he was Nazi. This go round, Goebbels was born into mask Jew, still male. Now, Goebbels got to be chancellor for less than 24 hours because Hitler passed it on to him before he committed suicide. And less than 24 hours later, Goebbels committed suicide with his wife Magna, their children, and I believe the family dog. Well, obviously the dog and the children didn't commit suicide. They did them in. Now he has chosen not Jews, but especially Hispanics, or to they have now replaced the Jews. Brown people, BIPOC, have replaced Jews in this lifetime. And he now governs de facto. So he gets to govern now, not just for less than 24 hours, but currently, right? Now, he ran the propaganda campaign justifying Ernst Röhm, and we're going to be discussing Ernst Röhm after Röhm's execution by Hitler. Dietrich was the second in command in the Office of Propaganda in Germany. And sometimes he wouldn't be as accurate or as good. He was not as good as Goebbels, and so Goebbels would sometimes have to correct him. Now, Dietrich is still wishy-washy. He was not the strongest of the Nazis. Before Hitler did commit suicide, he actually had sent him off because he thought he didn't have enough faith that they would survive. Now, he, as I said, is still wishy-washy. He doesn't know how to lie properly and cover his tracks, just as he was back in Nazi Germany. He was also, during the Third Reich, the gateway, the intermediary for the industrialists and the magnates and the Third Reich. So his wife was very influential because I guess she came from that class. And so he opened the way and facilitated the industrialists and the magnates to join the Nazis. Because, and of course they needed that group or those groups. In this go round, he is fulfilling the same identical role because he was an intermediary and is still an intermediary, not for, well, we can say the industrialists now, the ones who have replaced the industrialists, whether they be technogarchs or whatever you want to call them. Now, Reinhard Heydrich, which was one of the architects of the final solution, the man they called him with the iron heart, and as I said, architect of the Holocaust with Himmler, and he was also one of the architects of the 1938 pogrom Kristallnacht. He was the idea man, the implementer, the detail man. He was also the architect of the false flag operation that launched the invasion of Poland. He was one of the very few in the top ranks of the Nazi Party who would have been really, who would have fit the description of the true Aryan. He was tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, athletic, and he was from an aristocratic or semi-aristocratic family. Now, he would have been a true Übermensch. Currently, he is in America, and there are staunch resemblances. However, he is now in competition with Himmler, who is also in America. They're forever in competition to see who can outdo the other when it comes to cruelty, the games of cruelty. Himmler, for example, gave permission for people to drive through crowds of protesters, and I leave it at that when it comes to that. I won't identify them name-wise, but you can guess. Now, there are many who have changed their masks. You know, they are not necessarily female or male as they were back then. But because it's been so quick, the reincarnation, the soul cycle, they've come back and with what I call calling cards, resembling, physical resemblance to the Nazi entities that they were. But because when we reincarnate, we normally do not necessarily have to look like the people that we were in another lifetime or not. In this instance, some of them do have the physical resemblances. And the last one that I'll mention is one who, as in Nazi Germany, he would walk with his hands behind his back. Now he struts on stage with his hands behind his back, with his feet astride, wide gait, and the toes pointed outwards. And he has many addictions. Now, I'm going to get into the one that I think is very interesting. They're all interesting. And this is Ernst Röhm. Now I'm going to read. Ernst Röhm, he was born in 1887 and he died in 1934, was a military officer with the rank of captain in the Reichswehr, the German armed forces, and forgive my pronunciations, who was wounded 3 times in World War One. He had his nose blown off, but I'll get to that. He was a recipient of the Iron Cross First Class, one of the early members, before even Hitler joined, of the Nazi Party. Ernst Röhm, a close ally of Hitler, formed the Sturmabteilung, or the SA, known as the Brown Shirts, a violent private army that became instrumental in helping the Nazis gain power in Germany. He helped Hitler gain the support of the German army in Bavaria. In 1921, Benito Mussolini led an insurrection or coup in Italy dubbed the March on Rome and succeeded in overthrowing the government. Adopting Mussolini's model, Adolf Hitler and members of the Nazi Party aimed to seize power from the German government at the time. They seized the police chief, the governor of Bavaria, and the head of the army, the governing triumvirate in Bavaria. The men were released when they agreed to support the Nazis' proclamation of a revolution, which they then rescinded after they were released. A battle ensued between the authorities and the Nazis, and 4 policemen and 15 or 16 Nazis were killed. Goering was shot in the groin. Röhm surrendered, and Hitler, who injured his arm as he fled, was captured 2 days later. The trial and the sentences meted out for what was high treason was a farce. Does that sound familiar? Röhm was given a 15-month suspended sentence, placed on probation, and dismissed from the German armed forces. The SA was banned. Hitler was given 5 years in prison but served only 9 months, during which time he had the leisure and comfort to write Mein Kampf, transcribed by Hess and others, and enjoyed visits from his beloved canine. This event convinced Hitler that he needed to achieve power, the power he sought, through legal means. That's very important, this point. Because the SA was banned, Röhm created the Front Bahn with 30,000 recruits. He wanted to incorporate the Brown Shirts into this new, apparently legal paramilitary group. Hitler and the party leadership, not wanting to rattle and lose the support of the army and police with this move, refused his request. Röhm, the rabble-rouser, had a disdain for law and order and legalities. Sounds familiar. We're getting there. Disillusioned, he quit the party, worked as a book salesman and other jobs, and became destitute, relying on the good graces of friends. Röhm went to Bolivia in 1929 to serve as an advisor to the Bolivian army. Hitler recalled him back to Germany in January 1931, and then he took control of the Brown Shirts once more. With so many, especially young people, the unemployed and disaffected, during the Depression, the membership swelled to between 3 to 4 million recruits. During which time, I mean, the army that the rest of Europe permitted Germany, because that was part of the, call it, punishment from World War I. The Germans lost the war. They couldn't have more than 100,000 men as an army. And this was under the Treaty of Versailles. Now, like their founder, Ernst Röhm, the brown shirts were undisciplined, very violent, and had no regard for the law. They quelled dissent with violence, incited and created violence, and terrorized the population. With the 1933 orchestrated Reichstag fire and the consequent fire decree that would dismantle civil liberties and democracy proper in Germany, the brown shirts, the SA, played a not too small part in enforcement. The SA, or brown shirts, was instrumental in Hitler's rise and consolidation of power. By 1934, Röhm and his brown shirts had become extremely powerful and restless and dissatisfied. They had not enjoyed the spoils or the loot of war and their violence, and they had waged in the streets, including eliminating or imprisoning all political opponents and crushing dissent to put the party in power. It was the same story again with the little guy doing the grunge work and the daily grind, while the politicians and the elite enjoyed the fruits. There was too much bureaucracy and too many politicians. Röhm wanted a revolution. He was a populist and a demagogue. He wanted to incorporate once more his very large and powerful band of thugs and brawlers, replete with caches of weapons, into the Reichswehr and be the commander. But Hitler, not wanting to illustrate the industrialists and others with money and the army who believed in discipline, knew that his old friend, and they were old friends, was a loose cannon, too impulsive and undisciplined, and while he was charismatic, and he surely was, in attracting and commanding certain sections of the society, he was not the right fit to run a country. Well, that's what's happening in America now. Hitler had more sense than a lot of the American voters. Some in the leadership, like Goering and Himmler, felt it was time to act, and act they did. Using Röhm's homosexuality, known for years by Hitler, the thuggery and violence that was so instrumental in the Nazis' victory, they set about planning to eliminate him. The leadership of the SA and any remaining political opponents who had not been eliminated by the brown shirts. They manufactured evidence that Röhm and the SA leadership and others were planning a coup and were paid by the French. As previously cited, they also used his homosexuality. His fascination with teenage boys and the drunkenness and lasciviousness of the members of the SA to condemn them. During the operation known as the Night of the Long Knives, Röhm and most of the leadership of the SA were killed. Röhm was imprisoned on June 30th and shot on Hitler's order on July 1st, 1934. And I want to put this Jamaican saying: history teaches us that thief and thief God laugh. God laughs when he sees two thieves in cahoots. Supremacist ideology and practices is cannibalistic. In other words, in Jamaica, once again, they say dog, nam, dog. Röhm had outlived his use. We will note here that Röhm was not ashamed of his homosexuality. It was an open secret that was not even a secret. He had a preference for much younger men and teenagers. The entity that was Röhm reincarnated after 12 years, a very short soul cycle indeed. But of course we know why. As mentioned previously, this was the chance. The entity then, Ernst Röhm, was short, stocky, and fat. The coloring of the face, then as now, as the entity who he is now, is pronounced. The entity, Röhm had like a red coloring. There's always a flush red coloring to his face, red orangey coloring to his face. That was Röhm. Now, the entity had facial scars, Röhm did, from one of 3 different injuries suffered in World War I. A part of his nose was blown off. In this lifetime, that entity seems to have had a carryover of that injury. You know, like a mark of Cain from that injury, and the entity now often exhibit pronounced breathing as when one pinches one's nose while speaking. Like the entity that was Ernst Röhm then, the entity now abhors the law. He hates the law, breaks it at every opportunity, incites and creates violence and thuggery, and revels in violence. We recall that Hitler knew that his old friend was a loose cannon, too impulsive and undisciplined, and whilst he was charismatic in attracting and commanding certain sections of the society, he was not the right fit to run a country. The entity now has not changed in this respect, to the detriment of the American Manchurian regime, the detriment of America, and the detriment of the world. Hitler would never have entrusted him with running a country. The entity that was Ernst Röhm then was dismissed from the army due to its treason in the beer hall putsch. Then it was no fan of the army. He hated the army with its discipline, and he wanted to incorporate the bands of brigands into it, where the army would be pliant to it, and the essay and their rules or lack thereof. The entity now considers members of the armed forces losers and would never join it, but does not hesitate to use it as it does now against the citizens of the country for lawless actions. It has indeed succeeded in controlling an army far greater than the Reich there. And that is why this miscreant has returned. As in its past lifetime as Ernst Röhm, the entity is given to demagoguery and appeals to populism. The entity then, Ernst Röhm, loved parades and rallies, full of bravado and bluster, with an appeal to those of his ilk. As Ernst Röhm, the entity was disgruntled and aggrieved because it had not enjoyed the spoils that the others in the Nazi leadership had. The entity is now still vile and undisciplined, still filled with envy, grievance, and hate, has now returned filled with the 3 G's: greed, grift, and grievance. After the Beer Hall Putsch, the entity then as Röhm left the Nazi Party bouncing around from job to job, even as a book salesman. He was forced to live off the good graces of his friends. The entity's corruption knows no bound now. His whole existence now is for money. How much can it grift? There is no opportunity lost for the grift, yet it does not know how to keep that money. Once money enters its hands, it does not let it go, leading it to not paying for their services and labor. Other than its dishonest nature, that part of its lifetime in Germany after the Beer Hall Putsch, where it had to resort to selling many things including books, or forced to depend on the good graces of his friends, has no doubt played a part in this aspect of the behavior of this entity. This might also account for a certain parsimonious aspect to its character. The entity has not changed one iota once again. While it eschews alcohol, it indulges in other substances. It still believes in violence and craves power. It is vulgar, lewd, and lascivious. The entity then as Ernst Röhm was dissolute and given to loutish behavior. He was immoral, promiscuous, and lacked self-restraint. Violent, aggressive, a bully, and boorish, the entity that was Ernst Röhm indulged in orgies and public intoxication. According, Ernst Röhm was part of the last generation that sought to capture the values of the trenches, the camaraderie of the frontline soldiers in the First World War, with their restlessness, adventurism, and latent criminality masquerading as nationalism, and one who became a professional freebooter and swashbuckler with boundless contempt for the civilian way of life. The entity in this current lifetime is obsessed with size and attention. As Röhm, he was flamboyant, craved the limelight, attention, and the spectacle. This is one reason why the entity is obsessed, not only with the size of his hands, shoes, and the nether regions of others like Arnold Palmer, but also the size of buildings, ballrooms, and bank accounts. His love of that which is gaudy and gold in color aligns with the spectacle, flamboyance, the limelight, and attention. He is like Baal, as my guides said in March of 2025. The golden calf, as described by the guides, the same day they revealed the Al-Aqsa fire explosion, March 2025. That is not even real gold, but fake gold. We might recall that June 30th, 1934, when Hitler, accompanied by SS officers, went to arrest Röhm at the Hansabar Hotel, he was in the bedroom with a young man who was either his driver or his aide. In the hotel room, Hitler went to meet him, to take him to the prison where he would be shot the next day. He had been with that young man. Hours later, on July 1st, he would be executed, shot at Stadelheim prison. That was what we might say a semi-hot death, a surprise to him. We know that he would have been lost, so surprised that his old friend would do this to him. Initially, Hitler did not want to execute Röhm due to embarrassment or perhaps loyalty, but did so reluctantly, going along with the suggestion that Röhm committed suicide Röhm did not accept this option and said, according to this author Shearer, if I am to be killed, let Adolf do it himself. The entity has now reverted to his happy place in that lifetime, and the last moment of joy before his exit from the earthly plane. There is much to unpack here through the eyes of the soul, which we will not do at the moment. Some of us revert back to our childhood when we experience certain psychological issues as we age. Those experiences do sometimes those experiences do sometimes go as far back as a past life. The entity is now obsessed in these last days with handsome young men and handsome young men wanting to violently kiss him. According to Ticini, SA men, the men who were in the brown shirts with Rome, displayed a strong homoerotic element and did not hide their dislike for the weakness of women, something they used to justify their homosexuality. Röhm's emphasis on hypermasculinity served to counter prevailing mindset that associated homosexuality with feminine and weakness. His militarized masculinity aligned with the Nazis' all-male homosocial society. Warrior comrades. Mannerbund. Women disgusted Röhm, you see? Doesn't have any respect for women. And in a letter that he wrote to Carl Gunther Heimsott, author of Hetero and Homophilia, he said, I am not bothered by my inclination, even though it has sometimes brought me a fair amount of trouble. Deep down, he's even proud of it. At least I think so. We can see that here he has returned with the same attitudes, misogyny, actually disgust for females, and why the entity behaves the way it does. Both signatures are strikingly similar. The color of the face, once again, in the entity as Ernst Röhm was one of the standout features as that of the entity now. The entity that was Ernst Röhm, with its lawlessness, violence, indiscipline, and criminality, drove many not of his ilk away. And thus it was now for a while, but there has been a turnaround for the entity of late. If it has managed to attract many of the unlikely, why is this? It is not intentional, for this miscreant would not care to undertake such a noble task. From the spirit world, remember he's a miscreant, so it's not about making contracts. However, the entity is one of those who is advertently being used to unmask some of the pretenders to the throne of virtue, and in its correct actions helping to bring out in its incorrect actions helping to bring out the best in others as they bring light to cover the darkness that it brings. This miscreant is a foil and is at the bottom of the ladder of soul restoration. The entity is like temptation in the Garden of Eden, but only to those truly of its ilk. The entity is indeed the whore of Babylon, an agent of chaos, now descending into madness and reverting back to its memories and obsession with the violent kisses and beauty of young men, as in World War II, the excuse that was used to execute him. There's much more to the entity, including the mark of Cain, what I call the mark of Cain, of the cloaca-shaped mouth, alerting us to never trust the entity with our secrets, as I discussed in video 15. We will note here that Hitler would never have allowed Rome to be his second in command. He knew that Rome once again lacked that discipline and was more into the spectacle, could not control his desires, given into his vices, and as much as he was his oldest friend from the early days, they even addressed each other in the familiar term of du. So there was still a line to be drawn. Rome's talent was an agent of chaos and violence. Rome did not get the loot. In this go round, he is to be bribed with loot, and anyone can use him to dismantle even the world's most powerful country and America's democracy in record time. Satiate his base instincts and his unbridled vanity and narcissism. We leave it at that. And I end this one here. It's actually 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, you can, I'm gonna upload, what am I saying here? I think I'm tired actually. Anyhow, thank you for tuning in, and please do not forget to subscribe, share, comment, and like. And as usual, I end with this. Hate hitching a ride. Hate a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun. Hate waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the plague. Hate the bedbug waiting for our suitcase. Hate the roach riding on our coattails. Hate the shadow always lurking behind, sometimes longer than us. Hate just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away. A blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to impotence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. None of us is without blemish. All of us live in glass houses. God the Creator, that's something that is greater than us, has no chosen few. He bequeath unto none any lands. That's something that is greater than us, is not vindictive, selective, or supremacist in ideology and practices. That's something that is greater than us. Bequeath unto none of us lands. That's something that is greater than us would be short-sighted, cynical, and cruel to do such a thing, because seas and oceans rise and cover lands, volcanoes erupt and cover lands with lava and ashes. Earthquakes swallow us and our belongings. No, do not believe anyone who feeds you that Kool-Aid that God gave a group, any group, a parcel of land. We cannot fight for our on behalf of that something that is greater than us. That something that is greater than us doesn't need us to do that. That is arrogant. We're all tenants on this earth, not here to have dominion or to rule over anything or anyone. We are not here to have dominion over the fowl of the air, the fish in the sea, or the beasts in the fields. So, we're not here to have supremacy over each other. Let us be good tenants. Let us take care of ourselves, of our brothers, of this planet called Earth, and all the creatures that dwell thereon. Let us trod ever so lightly. Remember that there is something greater than us. And the only way we show our respect and love for that something that is greater than us is to take care of ourselves, our brothers, each other, and the planet called Earth. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when. Each of us shall return to our Father. May we know that we're just tenants on this earth and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have others, or have them, my guide, say, do unto us. Love. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am what my brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us. One divine, universal love.